because that's for our first essay, the memoir, that's almost kind of a good starting point. And as we move forward this week and next week, we're going to be really kind of trying to, resurrect some memories that were big for us, because with memoir writing, that's a big thing. And this is also probably the most challenging essay to write and also have it inspired by your book at the same time. So it's something we'll start talking about after, even maybe today, depending on how far we get with this, but after we talk about style guides and citations and things like that, we're going to move into starting to talk about memoir and starting to talk about that first essay and how we're going to tackle that baby. Okay? So the last kind of piece of the pie that I want you all to have in terms of all of this front-loaded material that you're going to need when you start writing. We talked about research. We've talked about integrating sources with pie, signal phrases, all of that kind of stuff. We've talked about the writing process and why it's important to give yourself time whenever you're writing something and going through those pieces of the process to make yourself a better academic writer. One of the last things that we kind of want to make sure we cover is this idea of style. Many of you have heard of this. It's whenever an instructor says, write this in MLA style or APA style, this is what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the style of how we put academic writing onto the page. Does anybody know why these exist? Does anybody want to talk about that? Like, why do we make you do this thing? Right? Like, why do we make you write in MLA style or APA style? Why do we make you, I mean, we kind of know why we cite sources, right? We don't want to plagiarize, but why do we cite them in a specific way? So there's some organization to it. Okay, so so that people maybe reading these academic pieces of writing in their mind know kind of how things are organized. That's one reason. What else? Basically just to drive us all nuts and make us all go crazy worrying about where to put the period and the parenthesis and all of that kind of stuff. So basically the justification really behind style guides is that we do in academia kind of want like a uniform. So that's kind of what was just said. It's like a uniform for written work. And essentially what they do is they establish common expectations, especially within disciplines. So there are a few different types of styles. Actually, there are a lot of styles, right? But APA is one that you'll often see in the sciences. And so what APA style does is it brings everybody in the sciences to where when they want to publish their work, and really a lot of it is about publishing the work. If they want to publish their work, there's a certain set of guidelines so that it looks uniform. It looks the same as it comes to publish. That way, what this does for other people, other researchers and other writers, is they know where to look when they're looking for something. And that's something that's really important, is they know with APA, they see those dates right there. So they can immediately see that your ethos is established if you're using sources that are within the last 5 years or whatever, right? So you're seeing, you can glance and skim that paper and you can see, ooh, 2023, 2022, right? And that's why APA has dates, because you want the most recent information when you're dealing with science fields and medical fields and things like that. MLA doesn't use dates as much within the actual text. Even though they're still important, you're going to see those dates more on the works cited page. We're more concerned about authors and primary sources and things like that with MLA. So this is kind of, style guides exist basically to create that uniform, and so that when other people look at your writing as a researcher, they're able to find, where did you get your information? What are your other sources that you consulted that I could consult? And it creates a more, I guess, user-friendly way to look at a piece of writing, especially in academia when a lot of people are doing a lot of reading and a lot of writing. So that's kind of what it's all about. So the style guide will give you rules for using and acknowledging sources, formatting pages, for your grammar and your punctuation, and even for tone. So APA actually even has different guidelines for how they want the tone to be than MLA, and we don't worry about that really at this level right now, but it's just good to know that it exists. Oops, there are several different style guides. These are just the few that are used the most often, I would say. MLA, which stands for Modern Language Association, and then APA, which is American Psychological Association. APA, even though it's psychological, you're going to deal with APA in most of the sciences and also education. And then Chicago Manual of Style. And Chicago Manual of Style usually is used with political science, history, all of those different disciplines and majors. And then MLA is kind of what you'll see in like Rhet and Comp fields, English fields, literature fields, and some of the other humanities that aren't science-based, okay? And then there are other ones. And when I was in grad school, Chicago was becoming more popular, and so I ended up writing in Chicago all through grad school because it's the best and I like it the most. But we still are asking in undergrad for you to write in either MLA or APA. If you feel like you would want to tackle Chicago, you could try it just for fun, but you're not going to have the guides for it at your disposal in your textbook. It would be something you'd have to look online for, which there's plenty of online resources for that. But these just all have different guidelines, different ways that you're going to organize the writing on the page. And that's what this is all about. Basically, these exist, but then you also have this situation where depending on your workplace, or if you were to publish something, which I don't know if any of us in here will be at that point, but you never know. Someday you honestly never know. You never know what kind of research project you'll be asked to do at work or be a part of, and maybe you'll be asked to be, writing a draft of that. You'll never know if you want to go to grad school someday, and then you're going to be back in this. You don't know. I didn't think I would go to grad school. I didn't think I would ever be a teacher. What did you want to be when you were a kid? Are you doing that now? Many of us are, many of us are not. I can tell you, I wanted to be a professional ice skater. That's what I wanted to be. Right? For a very long time. I never thought I would teach. So you never know, but it's definitely something you can learn as you go as well. The point really is to know that it exists and to know that it's an expectation. Composition 1 is your first kind of big schwack at this, where it will be a very important part of your grade. Did you write in the style? Do you have the style elements down? It's a chunk of all of your essays, okay? Style is going to be factored into your points that you earn on these essays because we want to sort of make sure that you're paying attention to it, getting used to it, because it's just a big part of comp, okay? So don't attempt to memorize. When you've done like MLA and APA long enough, like me, I have most of the things memorized, but even then, sometimes I have to check myself because there are a lot of little rules and little things that to pay attention to, and I'll encounter an essay every once in a while, and I'm like, Clayton did that. I don't know. Is that right? And I'll have to check, right? And I'll have to make sure that I'm right, which sometimes I'm not, or they change. That's the other thing about style guides. They change from edition to edition. And I know that some of your high school teachers are still using like MLA 5 when we're on MLA 9 now. And some of you come to me and it's like, this is literally MLA 5. Cool. You learned MLA 5, but sorry, we're now on MLA 9. And so that sucks because now you have to make all these changes, right? So don't attempt to memorize these. Understand that a style guide is an instruction manual. You're always going to be referring to those. You're always going to be doing that. And that's okay. You should have your textbook open to your style guide while you're writing. This is a big piece. That's part of why you get this thing. It has all your style guides in there. And then there are also resources online. Okay? You always should follow your instructor's guidelines, even when the style guide says something different. However, for me, I make it easy. Just do what the style guide says. Why is this doing this? This makes me crazy. Obviously, this is one of the easiest ways, like we talked about with plagiarism last week, to get caught in plagiarism. If you don't give yourself enough time to do the styling elements, and so then you forget to cite things correctly and that type of deal, that then leads to style points off and potential unintentional plagiarism, right? So you just want to make sure you're giving yourself time. That's why the writing process is so important, okay? It's very detail oriented. This is where you're using that detail oriented side of your brain. And it makes it tough. So your MLA handbook, we are on the 9th edition, but the 8th and 9th edition are very, very similar, especially for citations. The 9th edition is more, it just kind of gives more, but it really doesn't change the way that citations exist. So you can use really 8 or 9, and your citations are going to be correct, okay? This is going to provide rules for formatting. So how do we space things? How do we put our name on the paper? What kind of heading? How do we put our page numbers on? What are we allowed to do and not allowed to do in terms of those things? MLA gives you strict guidelines for those different things. Spacing, you need to pay attention to all of those things. People will often just kind of willy-nilly start their essay, and they'll be like 4 spaces between the title and the first paragraph. And MLA says, wrong, don't do that, right? There are actual rules for that. You can't just willy-nilly start spacing things, right? And I'm not going to teach you all of the different things. There might be a moment where I'll say, here's how you set up your paper in MLA. But what Kurt and I have decided for our comp classes is the best way to have you learn this is to tell you to use your style guide, honestly. Nobody wants to stand up here and listen to me lecture about how to space stuff all day long. And it won't stick in your head anyway unless you're in your book figuring it out, okay? So make sure you're formatting your paper correctly according to whichever style you're using. In-text citations, those refer to those citations that come in parentheses as you're writing. APA and MLA are very different. One of the worst things that I see with style, one of the biggest issues that I see with style is when someone decides that in the first part of their paper, their parentheses citations are going to look like this. And then, you know, later in their paper, they're like this. These are 2 different types of citation. This one isn't even right according to APA. This is an MLA citation. A lot of times what happens, and one of the reasons why for a long time Kurt and I were like, we're just doing MLA, is because we somehow fuse these together and then we're in 2 different styles. Nobody wants that. So make sure that you're figuring out, if I'm writing an APA, this is what my parenthetical or my in-text citations are going to look like. And if I'm in MLA, this is what they're going to look like. So know that there's formatting guidelines, there's in-text citation guidelines. So after you integrate a quote or an idea from your source, you always need to have that in-text citation. And then there's a page at the end of your paper that is either a works cited or a references page. So that exists as well. Those are the 3 main things that you need to pay attention to when you're going to write a paper. How am I setting this thing up according to the style? What are my in-text citations looking like? How do I make sure I give credit to my sources correctly? And then what is my list of works cited or references at the end supposed to look like according to the style that I'm using? Okay, so those are 3 major things. APA, like I've already said, a lot of these things, we're currently on the 7th edition, just so that you know it was a substantial revision from the 6th, so make sure you're using the 7th with APA. There's the student version, and then there's a professionals version. Obviously, whenever you see anything about that, you'll want to focus on the student version. The professionals version is much more complicated, and you don't want to mess with that probably. But just use the student version. It does use in-text citations, but there's a couple different ways that you have to do them. And this is the only style that requires dates in the parentheses, okay, in the in-text citation. So if you're choosing to use MLA, I don't know, there's no dates. There's no dates in those parenthetical citations, okay? And then there are bibliographic citations at the end as well. So again, you have each of these. You have APA and MLA in your textbook. And so when you're writing, you can have this open and you can kind of know what you need to do. The other thing that I would recommend is when you look at sample essays, which you should do. I always provide sample essays. Use that also as a guide for how does this style work? What do I need to do with style? Okay. Now, here's something I will say. Automated citation generators, okay? You might be sitting there thinking, why is she going on and on about this? I'm just going to use EasyBib anyway. Exactly. I read his mind, right? Cool. Not cool, okay? The reason that it's not cool is I guarantee you they're going to come back to me wrong. And that sucks because I'll pay attention and I know when they're wrong. And so I want you to know that citation generators are not always great. A lot of that is because it asks you for a lot of information. You have to fill it in. What if you fill in this little piece wrong? There's a lot of room for user error with that. And to tell you the truth, once you get used to it, you can build the citation yourself faster, I think, than using EasyBib, to be honest. You just have to do the work to get used to it. EasyBib is not good. CiteFast is not good. I will tell you one that I like. Some of my basic writers probably already know this one. It's called mybib.com. It's a free tool that Harvard gives to their students because Harvard has their own style guide for if you go to Harvard, they want you to write not in MLA, not in APA, not in Chicago, but in Harvard style. And so they are very pretentious about it. And so they've made this tool available, and I like it because it, I feel, gives the most accurate ones, and it's not advertising to you all the time. Remember that if you aren't paying for a product, you are the product. So with those other Chegg-based ones like EasyBib and stuff, you're getting advertised to. They're collecting your data. They're selling your data. They're always asking you to buy stuff. Those aren't good. Just stay away from those. But honestly, best bet is always building your own citations and building your own works cited page. You're going to learn more. You're going to get it down. Also, please don't use Microsoft Word citation tool and formatting. They're wrong. They're not right. They're in outdated versions. They're more hassle than they're worth because then when you have to change things, it's just a disaster for you. Honestly, they're more problematic than helpful. So I would recommend not using Word's referencing tools, okay? Again, unfortunately, they try to make things easier, but they end up not. So that's what I've learned. Because people have come to me like, why did I get all these points off on my style? I used the Microsoft Word tool. Like, they did it all for me. I'm like, because it's not the updated version or whatever it is, right? It just isn't, it's not right, okay? And it is important to pay attention to that stuff. So honestly, I think sometimes a bibliography from scratch, in-text citations from scratch are a better bet, okay? That's all I really have to say about that. But I do have a little something for us to do. Your first one is cite the book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. What do you need to know? In MLA, cite in MLA, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. The book. Using just your style guide. But you're doing the book. Do you know how to use the table of contents, Kelsey? Can you find them? So we're working on just work cited. So that's this is all work cited. That's we're in your signal for today. So one author. Okay, author's last name. Okay. Now this depends on the version of the book. Okay. There are other versions of the book that it's been published and republished. So they had a different publisher, did you, than I have up here? Do you have Crown and you guys had Crown? That's okay. So understand that that can change, right? A citation isn't the same all the time. If a book has been republished or something like that with a new edition, maybe a new introduction or introduction by, or with books like this, where there's ongoing things happening, they do different editions. So, but essentially this is what it should look like. So at first, these ladies had Skloot, Rebecca highlighted, because you know how in your book it looks like it's kind of like highlighted, right? You don't actually highlight that. I don't know why your book throws you off a little bit like that. So I can see why you did what you did. These guys were really close, but what did you not have when I looked at it? You did, but what did you not have? Peyton's like, oh my God. No, I didn't even see that. What? Good. You didn't have the title of the book in italics. That's why it was wrong. Make sure all of your titles of your books or your larger works are in italics. So if it's a book or a novel, the title of that would be in italics. A chapter title would be in quotation marks. So the smaller work within a larger work is quotation marks. The larger work is italics. Okay? All right. You guys ready for the next one? Addie's like, I want to be done. There's only 3, so it's not an all-day thing. Okay, it's just practice using your style guides. You got to get you in there, or you'll just be intimidated by it for the rest of class. Okay, here we go. Source 2, cite an APA, and this scientific article titled "More Than Communication Skills, Experiences of Communication Conflict in Nursing Home Nurses." This is the information. Yeah, go. How do you set that up? Differences with APA and MLA. First of all, an article in a journal, when we're talking about research, those scientific journals, that's what a lot of your research is going to come from if you get it off of the databases. And so a lot of those are what we call articles in a journal, because the scientific journals are those database journals, okay? When you are listing authors in APA, in MLA, it's going to let you just list 3 and then say et al. In APA, you have to list a lot of them. And so listing all of them, but notice that the initials are what gets listed first. In APA, they're very interested in making sure that sources stay genderless, because they don't want bias, especially in the sciences, to creep into their reader. So that's why we initial. That's why a lot of times in APA, you're only saying the last name of the author, and you're not using first names. Your date should be in parentheses. One of the differences between MLA and APA is when you're titling the article, it should not be capitalized. Okay, it should not be capitalized. Not every word anyway. In MLA, you're going to capitalize every word of the title. In APA, you're not. And then medical education is the journal. The volume number is 47. So if you have the word volume in there first, you'll take that out, and the volume should be italicized. And then the number there is that next thing. Page range, and then the DOI. Okay? I think that maybe my mistake is, should we be in quotation marks there? What does it say in your style guide? It doesn't. Maybe that's my bad then. No quotation on the title. Okay. There you go. Something I needed to check. But otherwise, I think we're good here. Okay, so that's that one. Do you guys want to do one more, or do you hate life right now? So I'm gonna give Peyton's group a credit on that one, and Michelle's also on that one, because you guys all had that really, really close. Okay. All right, go ahead and return to your seats. Last one I was going to have you do is this one. I want you to be aware, I was going to have you do this one at MLA, that then when you're citing things like maybe documentaries or something, there's even more other things to consider. But now you've been in your style guide, you know how to work that a little bit better. For people that miss class on a more frequent basis, where I'm just kind of recording the day in case you guys want to see what went down. Okay, so let's go to memoir. I believe I published this page for you to take a look at and to just kind of see what was going to happen within this unit. So this is our first major essay that we're going to embark upon now. I'm going to talk to you a lot about what memoir is. It falls into a type of writing called creative nonfiction. So it's one of my favorite types of writing to do personally, because you still get to have the fun that you would have with creative writing. I know you guys are like, only you think writing is fun. The rest of us in here do not. I hope you do. Maybe after this class. You still get to kind of have the fun of creative writing, but you're writing something nonfiction, so something that actually happened, something real and true, and you're also writing based on a personal experience of some kind. And so this should sort of hearken us back to what I opened class with today. A lot of times when you're writing memoir in that genre and that style of writing, you're really writing about some core memories or something that changed your perspective or something that is like a personal story, a personal experience that inspires some sort of argument in you or inspires some sort of stance, something like that. And we'll talk some more about what creative nonfiction is and what it isn't as we move forward. But I just kind of wanted you to see this page first. So I have this memoir assignment description both on your module page, and of course, as always, it's in the multi-genre handout, okay, the multi-genre project handout. It's all in there. So what this is going to be, and this is MLA, most likely you'll pick MLA for this, but maybe APA, it's okay. Anytime it says MLA, if you do APA, it's fine, okay? Either one, as long as you stay consistent in one style. You're looking at about 1,000 words. And whenever I have insight into the word requirement, you guys, that is sort of a soft limit. I don't like word limits personally. It's just that I provide them because some people really feel like they need them. Some people really want that structure to know what they're shooting for, and so I provide them. But if you're a little bit short of this, but it still does what it needs to do, and it has all the elements that it needs in it, then that might be okay. If you're over this, certainly going over this is very possible in a memoir. But what you need to be mindful of if you go over is, do I have a lot of information that I don't need, right? Am I overwriting, and could I scale it back and still have the same impact? So around 1,000 words is what you're shooting for. Traditionally, memoirs present an engaging personal story with some sort of argument. And when I say argument, I'm using that a little bit loosely because memoirs sometimes will be less explicitly argumentative or persuasive, and they will be more like, here's the lesson. Just a little bit softer. Like there's a lesson learned of some kind, but it's not as forceful as the persuasion or the argument in a different type of essay. So your memoir should be something personal, something that actually happened. It should be storytelling, and we'll talk more about this next time we meet. And yet, there should be something in there that you're teaching the reader. Now, the caveat to this also is I want you to somehow, not explicitly in the writing, but in your head at least, be connecting it to what you're reading, your reading selection, okay? So how maybe is your reading selection, and this is where your journals come in really handy. How is your reading selection creating personal connections for you? Maybe things that have happened to you or things it's making you think of. And then is that personal connection strong enough to tell a story about it that is able to teach a lesson or make an argument? Because that's what you'll then pivot to with your memoir. Okay, so this is just kind of hopefully in your head, it comes together. What you're reading presents some sort of idea, some connection for you in your head, and then you're able to think about how would I tell this as a story with some sort of significance to it. Okay, I want you to try to incorporate at least one credible source to add further meaning and perspective to your lesson or to your argument. Only one source here needs to exist, okay? And I already have one sample essay online. I'm going to also integrate a couple other student essays for you to look at as well from previous classes, okay? So you can get an idea of how this works. And if you want to incorporate more than one source, you can, but it's not a research paper, okay? And so this assignment description tells you kind of what's your purpose here, or your telos. Really, you want to illustrate a personal experience that somehow relates or develops ideas addressed in your reading selection, okay? Long story short, that's what you're doing. So what we're going to do in the next several class periods is we're going to go into what is creative nonfiction, how do we go about writing it, what are the sort of pillars that we're looking for to include in our writing, how do we address an audience, how do we write descriptively or like showing instead of telling. We're going to look at ways to do those different things. How do you integrate some sort of message or stance, and those types of things. And then I have grading criteria down here. The first thing that you're going to take on is going to be a proposal. So for every major essay, I want to see a proposal for what you think you're going to write about. I believe these proposals are due next Tuesday. Am I right? Do you guys remember? We can double check. The 26th. Is that Tuesday or Thursday? I think it's Thursday, actually. Is that right? No, it can't be Thursday. It has to be Tuesday. I'm wrong. It's Tuesday. Somebody check. It's Tuesday. Okay, so I was right. So the proposal is due Tuesday. And again, all of this information is in your multi-genre project handouts if you have that printed out. When you submit your proposal, this is what I want you to tell me. Okay, so you have a week to start thinking about this, and we'll brainstorm this even more deeply on Thursday when we meet together. Okay, I'm going to tell you about creative nonfiction on Thursday. We're going to do an actual brainstorming activity with this. You're going to get to read a lot of memoirs by professional writers. Yay. Actually, really yay. People really like these. And then secondly, you are going to get to kind of do some writing activities to brainstorm, that type of thing. And then your proposal is it's a big brainstorming document for you. This is the place where you can kind of explore some of your initial ideas. So in your proposal, I want you to tell me, what do you think your argument of your memoir is going to be? So what did you learn? What's your lesson? What's kind of the moral of your story? Whatever story you're going to tell, which means you have to have kind of an idea of the story too, right? Or what you're going to talk about. What idea are you trying to prove within your personal experience? Okay. And this is something that we're going to work on Thursday. What are the specific memories or stories that you plan to use to illustrate your argument? Okay, what kind of details do you think you'll use to engage the audience? Remember, you're not writing your life story, but probably limiting this to a couple, if at most, personal experiences. Maybe, I think it works best when you just have one story to tell, and that's what you're telling. And then number 3, provide the potential source or list of sources that you're going to use to support your argument. You want to refer to your multi-genre project handout for more details on this, but I want you to provide an annotation in a paragraph after your citation. So you'll write your citation just like we practiced today. Here's the source that I'm thinking about, and you write out the citation for that source, and then you annotate that right after with a paragraph telling us why this is a credible source. And so you can use the CRAP test for this. What is its currency? What is its reliability? What is its authority? And what is its purpose? Okay. You won't use the annotation when you turn in your final essay. I just want this on the proposal. Okay. Let me show you guys something real quick so that you feel, okay, I'm going to pull this over and show you something. This is just like a sample works cited. This is the citation generator that I don't mind. This one is called MyBib. So if I'm using this citation generator, it's just mybib.com. Let's say I have these works cited here. This is one kind of handy way, if you did use this, to do your annotation for your proposal. So let's say I'm going to use Thinking Like a Mountain by Aldo Leopold for my memoir. Has anybody read this essay by Aldo Leopold? It's a great one, and it's only like a page long. You guys have read it. Yeah, Bronson has read it. Do you remember this one? What's it about? Do you guys remember? Thinking Like a Mountain. Do you remember what it's about, Kelsey?
I remember that there's some
It's a wolf. It's a wolf. He's hunting wolves. Do you remember this one? He's hunting wolves and he shoots his first wolf. And then he realizes like how much the wolf means to the mountain, really. And then he encourages his audience to think like a mountain more when they're doing things like this. Anyway, so let's say that somehow relates. Maybe Bronson wants to tell a hunting story as his personal memoir, something that he learned. And Aldo Leopold relates to that. Maybe he had a similar experience where he was hunting something and then started thinking like the mountain and was like, whoa, you know, who knows, right? So I want to show you guys this. This is the citation according to this version of Thinking Like a Mountain. So let's say I edit this. So when I put this in originally, it asks for this information. And some of this information automatically populates. And then some of it doesn't. But what I like about this is if you wanted to add an annotation down here, you could. So you could say in this essay, Leopold tells the story of his hunting experience with wolves. This source and essay is common in surveys of environmental texts, even though it was published in the Sand County Almanac, which was published in like 1955 or something, right? Originally. Leopold is still seen as an authoritative voice in environmental reading or something, right? So you're just kind of saying like, why is this credible? Why am I using it? You might even put more than that based on your requirements. But I just want to show you that then when I click save on this, it formats and saves the annotation for me, okay? And this, if you use your 3 dots, can be copied then directly into your proposal, okay? And it should format correctly. So that's just a little tool that I don't mind you using. I always encourage you, obviously, to use your style guides and figure these out also on your own, but this is a helpful little piece too. What I like about this is it keeps your sources to, if you title your project Composition 1 over here, all of your sources that you use all semester could be here, which is kind of nice to have later. Maybe you'll want to use them again. So that's just something I want you to see as well. Okay, any questions on this? Any questions on the proposal? Questions?